Maplewood Park was a quiet little haven tucked in the heart of a peaceful town. In the late afternoons, as the sun leaned low behind the trees and the shadows stretched across the grass, the sound of birdsong mixed with the breeze drifting through the branches. And there, beneath an old oak tree, sat an elderly man with silver hair, alone, silent, always in the same spot. He arrived at exactly 4 o'clock every day. Not a minute early, not a second late. Like clockwork. No one knew his name. No one knew where he came from. He never spoke to anyone, never waved, never even nodded. Adults walking their dogs or pushing strollers barely glanced his way. He blended into the park like part of the landscape, an unnoticed fixture. But the neighborhood kids took notice, not out of curiosity or kindness, but the kind of cruel fascination that sometimes clings to youth. They called him the park mute. Some mocked the way he sat motionless, pretending to freeze like statues. Others dared each other to sneak up and drop crumpled paper into his coat pockets. One day, a boy even drew a smiley face on the back of his bench with a marker, but the old man never flinched, never scolded, never so much as looked up. He just sat there, quietly scattering crumbs from a paper bag for the pigeons and sparrows that flocked his feet. His stillness unnerved them. His silence challenged them. Because when someone doesn't react, it feels like a dare. Kyle, a 13-year-old boy from the block, decided to make a video of the old man. He told his friends it would go viral on TikTok. He planned to title it Maplewood's Human Statue. With 3 of his buddies in tow, Kyle pretended to kick around a soccer ball while secretly filming from a distance. But during their little charade, the ball accidentally struck the old man's shoulder. His paper bag dropped to ground. Birds scattered in a frantic flap of wings. Kyle froze, expecting the man to shout or at least scowl. But he didn't. The old man simply bent down, picked up his bag, brushed the dust off his coat, and sat back down. No anger, no reaction. For the first time, Kyle looked at the man, not through a camera, not through the lens of a joke, but really looked. He noticed the deep creases around his eyes, the weathered hands, the eyes that seemed both distant and vast, like they had seen too much of the world and chose to keep quiet about it. He felt something. Guilt, maybe, or shame, or just confusion. He put the phone back in his pocket. On the way home, he didn't say a word to his friends. They teased him for getting weird about it, but he didn't answer. That night, Kyle couldn't stop thinking about the man. The next day, the old man returned. Same time, same bench, same bag of crumbs. But this time, Kyle didn't bring his phone. He didn't bring his friends. He just sat on a nearby bench and watched. He watched the way the man's fingers delicately dropped bits of bread for the birds. He watched the way the man's shoulders stayed hunched, as though carrying a weight invisible to others. Once or twice, he thought he saw the man glance at him, but it was so quick, he couldn't be sure. That Saturday, a group of high school volunteers came to clean up Maplewood Park. Among them was a history teacher named Mr. Langdon, who had lived in the town for decades. As the group trimmed bushes and picked up litter near the old oak tree, one of the students pointed out something odd, a faded wooden plaque, half covered in moss, bolted to the tree trunk beside the old man's bench. They scraped away the moss, and slowly the words emerged. In honor of Staff Sergeant Joseph Granger, for your service in silence. 1972. Mr. Langdon gasped. Joseph Granger. I remember that name. He served in Vietnam. Marine Corps. He was a hero decorated. Lost his whole unit in an ambush and still got out alive with 3 wounded men on his back. The students stared at each other in stunned silence. Could it be? Was this the same man? Back at home, Mr. Langdon rummaged through his old files and local newspaper clippings. Sure enough, he found a photo, black and white, dated 1973. It showed a young soldier, eyes sharp, uniform soaked in mud, carrying another man across his shoulders through dense jungle. The caption read, Sergeant Joseph Granger returned from Vietnam with 2 Purple Hearts. The resemblance was undeniable. The quiet old man in the park was no ordinary bystander. He was a soldier, a survivor, a man whose name had once been spoken with honor, now forgotten erased by time, reduced to a mystery by the same people he'd once fought to protect. The news spread fast. Kyle heard it from his mom the next morning, then saw it on the town community Facebook page. His stomach dropped. The shame burned hot and cold all at once. He remembered every joke, every whisper, every crumpled paper. He wasn't the only one feeling it. Across town, parents had quiet talks with their children. Adults who'd walked past that man for years without a glance suddenly found themselves searching for him in the park, unsure of what they'd say. But when 4 o'clock came around, there he was, on the same bench, feeding the same birds under the same old tree, as if nothing had changed, except everything had. That autumn afternoon, Maplewood Park was blanketed in golden leaves. The air was crisp, and the wind rustled softly through the old oak trees. The elderly man with silver hair showed up as usual, right at 4 p.m., same worn gray coat, same faded fabric cap pulled low over his brow, and the same slow, deliberate hand scattering crumbs for sparrows around his usual bench. A group of kids played nearby, their laughter loud and carefree. Among them was Kyle, the rowdiest boy in the neighborhood. He held a rubber ball, eyes glinting with mischief. Then suddenly, he threw the ball toward the old man, letting it bounce to a stop right at the man's worn shoes. "Hey, park mute!" Kyle shouted with a mocking grin. His friends burst out laughing. The old man didn't flinch. He simply bent down, picked up the ball with trembling hands, and tossed it back, gently, but with surprising precision. His face didn't show anger or irritation. There was just that same quiet, weary calm in his eyes. Something about it gave Kyle pause, though he wouldn't admit it out loud. Just then, a black SUV pulled up and parked a few yards away. The door opened, and a man in military uniform stepped out. He was broad-shouldered, weathered by time and duty, and carried a neat bouquet of white chrysanthemums in one hand. His eyes were red, as if he'd been crying. He scanned the park, then walked directly toward the old man. The kids grew quiet, curious. Even Kyle stood frozen. The man stopped in front of the bench and snapped into a firm military salute. "Lieutenant Colonel Joseph L. Granger," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been looking for you for over a month." The entire park seemed to hold its breath. The old man, Granger, looked up. His eyes, usually distant, flickered with recognition. He said nothing, just nodded. The soldier reached into his jacket and pulled out a photo. He held it up for the children to see. In it was a young soldier smiling brightly, standing among his comrades in dusty fatigues. "This is my nephew," the man said. "He was gravely injured in Ghazni, Afghanistan in 2012. Everyone had pulled back. No one was willing to go back for him. But this man, Granger, he went alone under fire and carried my nephew on his back all the way to the evac chopper." He swallowed hard. Not once, not twice, but again and again for others. He never asked for medals, never gave interviews. He simply said, "I did what needed to be done." The wind swept through the trees, scattering leaves onto Granger's shoulders. The children stood frozen. Kyle clutched the ball in his hand, feeling a tight knot in his chest. The memories of laughter and mockery came rushing back like shameful echoes. "We called him the Ghost of Afghanistan," the man continued, "but he never claimed that title. He just wanted to be left alone." A little girl clung to her mother's hand. A boy looked down, ashamed. Kyle took a hesitant step forward, as if trying to say something, but no words came. Then, for the first time, Granger spoke. His voice was gravelly, low yet calm. "Being a soldier," he said slowly, "is just a small part. Being human, that's the hard part." That one sentence fell like thunder in the silence. It shattered the wall of misunderstanding and childish arrogance that had grown around the old man. There were no more smirks, no more nicknames, only wide eyes filled with awe, remorse, and newfound respect. Kyle stepped closer, lowered his head. The other kids followed, inching forward quietly. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. Granger's eyes had already forgiven them before they even knew they needed forgiveness. The uniformed man gently placed the bouquet next to the bench. "Today is the anniversary of my mother's death," he said softly. "If it weren't for you, she would have never gotten to say goodbye to her grandson. He turned, walked slowly back to the SUV, and drove off, leaving behind a silence that was heavy yet reverent. From that day on, Maplewood Park was no longer home to a mute old man. It became the quiet sanctuary of a silent hero, a living monument of courage and dignity. And the children, especially Kyle, would grow up carrying that story in their hearts. The story of the silver-haired man under the oak tree, who once bore their laughter with silence and taught them all, without a single reprimand, what it meant to truly respect, to be kind, and to see the soul behind the silence. From that day forward, everything in Maplewood Park seemed to change completely. The children who once mocked the old man no longer laughed at him or called him hurtful nicknames. Instead, they began to sit beside him every afternoon, attentively listening to his stories about the past, the harsh days on the battlefield, the comrades who had fallen, and the beloved wife he had lost many years ago. The noisy atmosphere gave way to respect and quiet reverence. Kyle, the mischievous boy from before, now learned how to properly fold the American flag, a ceremony that Mr. Granger patiently taught the whole group. Every careful, precise fold seemed to carry deep gratitude for the country and those who had sacrificed. Lessons of patience, respect, and love for the nation began to sink into the hearts of the young children, guided gently by the silent old man. Not long after, a small, solemn ceremony was held at the neighborhood school. A bronze plaque was hung at the entrance, engraved with his name, Joseph L. Granger, the unsung hero. People from all around, from young to the elderly, came to pay their respects to the veteran. The plaque was not just a tribute to a soldier, but a reminder to the entire community of the value of courage and quiet sacrifice. Mr. Granger, who spoke so little, seemed transformed in his gaze. For the first time in many years, he smiled softly but warmly, as if to silently thank everyone who had shown him respect. Though few words were spoken, every glance and gesture held deep meaning. His warm, calm voice closed the story. Sometimes the quietest people carry the greatest stories inside. Don't be quick to judge someone by their appearance, because you never really know who they truly are. These words were not only a lesson for the children, but a message for all of us, the next generations. In today's fast and noisy world, sometimes it is the quiet moments and thoughtful faces that hold the most inspiring and powerful stories, stories we must cherish and learn from. If you believe that unsung heroes like Mr. Granger deserve to be honored, please hit like and subscribe to Old Soldier Story. We share stories that others have forgotten, but we must never forget, because these are precious lessons about courage, patience, and humanity that are essential in all our lives.